everyone, and welcome. My name is Krista of Practical Astros, and I'm here with my friend Liz. Hi, Liz. How are you doing?
Hi, Krista. I'm great. How are you today?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I invited Liz on to just chat. We met, I think, on Substack first, maybe.
Yeah.
And we were talking. It's been a few months since we last talked, and it just feels like years ago at this point. Like March does not feel like it really happened in this decade. But we're going to talk about Liz and your practice and your introduction to astrology and the way that you approach things. Liz is an astrologer that kind of came to astrology during a pretty major upheaval in your life. And studying your own chart and the cycles helped shape the chapter of your life that you're kind of now in. And you're ever blooming, you're launching things, you're refining your practice, refining your clients, and I'm just really happy and lucky that you're sitting here with me today, that we can kind of talk about your practice and talk about your astrology and your whole journey. So just thanks again for joining me. I'll share your website. And would you like to share a little bit more about just who you are and what brought you into astrology? And then we can just launch into some questions.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your lovely introduction. And I'm just so pleased to be here today. My path to astrology is an interesting one, but aren't they all? So, my background was pretty traditional. I grew up in the Midwest. um, Went to college and grad school and straight into a big firm job working in management consulting. And I stayed in that career for 10 years, only even switched firms once. I have a strong Capricorn stellium, including my sun. I picked my mountain and I climbed it.
On brand, on brand.
Yes, yes. And little did I know when Uranus entered Taurus and came into my 10th house, wow, did things really get a shakeup in my career and just my whole life. I moved to California. I was from the Midwest, like I said, and lived in Chicago my whole adult life doing management consulting. I'll talk a little bit more about that first because it connects, I think, to the astrology through archetypes, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today.
It's just
Is
so
I,
Capricorn coded too, just managing consulting.
right,
It's
right.
brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to study psychology. I was always interested in psychology, but I wanted to do something practical and also prestigious. I wanted to make a lot of money and I wanted to travel the world and be successful. And I did, and that was wonderful. But the type of consulting I did was very human behavior based, change management, understanding employee behavior at work, understanding leadership, team dynamics. And I loved Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finders, use collecting data, analyzing the psychological and personal and cultural elements, those things that are often invisible, but finding ways to make them tangible, operationalize them, and make sense of them, right? Put them into systems and make it practical to help people be more efficient in their teams, improve their workplace culture, etc. So, anyways, I did that and had a really wonderful, very fulfilling career for many years. But I always felt like, I'd made partner. I loved the firm I worked for. I found the work really interesting, fulfilling. But once you reach the top of your mountain, you start thinking, there's got to be something else. And I was starting to get the itch. And that was the early days of Uranus entering Taurus, but I just had no idea. And I was thinking, maybe I should change careers. Maybe I should do something entrepreneurial, or maybe it's going to be the next, really rewarding relationship. And then through work, I had an opportunity to move to the West Coast, to Los Angeles. That was just not on my radar at all. I wasn't seeking it, but when the opportunity came, it felt like it clicked. And I'm so glad I went for it. That was the beginning of opening my mind and a lot of big changes in my career and personal life.
That's such a like surprise thing that Uranus can do. But as you were speaking it, it reminds me of that relationship that the ninth house has with the 10th house, as like the sun, like if we imagine it, it like climbs up, the signs climb up to the 10th house at that pinnacle. And then once you have climbed your mountain, like now what? What's next? And like that spiritual divine relationship of when you are falling off the 10th house going into the ninth, it's like finding meaning in that purpose, finding something that is beyond the fame and recognition and legacy of the 10th, but like what is deeply important and divine in the ninth. So the way you were describing it just feels so ninth, 10th related.
Oh, that's a beautiful connection. Yeah, yeah. So once I got here, I thought, oh, I'm opening an office location for the firm I was working for at the time. I'll own this. I'm going to grow this. This is going to be that deeply rewarding thing. And wow, life had different plans for me. Wow. And so I ended up leaving the firm, starting something entrepreneurial, taking the risks. It was very exciting. My first entrepreneurial thing ended up not working out, and I was really devastated at the time. But shortly after that, Pluto was also making some big transits over that Capricorn stellium, which includes my Sun, my Venus, my Mercury, my whole identity, how I think, how I make meaning in the world, and what I love, and my descendants. So just wow. So then my dad got unexpectedly sick, and I went back to Indiana while he was in the hospital and was there through his illness and eventual passing. And I realized, wow, if this entrepreneurial thing had taken off, or I'd almost closed a deal, I almost bought a business. If I was owning a new business owner, there was no way I would have been available to go home and be present through my dad's final weeks. And that experience, now that's a Pluto transformational
For
experience to
sure.
be up close and personal through not just the death and loss, but the dying experience. It's very difficult, and sad and full of grief. But the most surprising aspect to me was how sacred it was. It was the first time in my life that I felt like nothing else mattered. Time, the rest of the world, all my career ambitions, everything else about my life, it just didn't exist. And I was in this very sacred container where it just, I knew this is where I'm supposed to be, and absolutely nothing else matters.
Well, and
So,
just to recognize that too, because, other people go through those transformative external experiences, but don't necessarily have the capacity to come out of it with what you came out of it. So I think it's beautiful that you received those transits. They're really difficult things. Pluto on your sun is no joke, right? So
oh yeah,
but
yeah.
to come through that and then to have the wisdom to integrate what was broken apart, having all of that life build up and then fall apart, but then use that and transmute it. I just think there's like kudos to you for doing that because it is not easy work and not everyone really has the capacity or the strength or the fortitude or the grace to be able to do that. So I'm sorry you went through that, but I'm also proud is kind of the word that comes up, I'm like proud that you were able to kind of integrate that in such like a really lovely way. And selfishly because it brought you eventually into the astrology world, which is how I got to know you. So I just, give yourself some sort of medal or credit for coming out of it, not just surviving, but actually transformed, because it is not an easy thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. And I'll skip over the rest, just the cliff notes, because that was just the beginning. Pluto was going to retrograde and have more for me. So after that, I was like, oh, my career ambitions changed and I started looking at death doula training or launching a business in, the hospice care space or something with data and systems integration because I just felt there's such a need here and most people just don't have a tolerance for operating in that space. And I knew after that I was like, "Oh, I can sit with dying and death and not run away and not many people can do that." And that is so needed in our culture so badly. So, fast forward, I'm really looking for a deeper purpose now, not just something entrepreneurial and cool to make my legacy, right? So, I was trying a bunch of different things and they weren't working out. And then a year and a half later, my mom got unexpectedly ill with late stage cancer. And we went through a similar thing for a few months. But again, because my things hadn't taken off or I just wasn't there yet, Pluto had more work to do with his retrograde back over my sun and Venus. Being with my mom through her final months and passing was another really difficult but sacred and really beautiful and loving experience to be able to give, to each of my parents and be that person to give my love and permission through their final days and their transition. So, after that, then I come back to California and was just really looking for what is that deeper purpose. And I stumbled upon Caroline Meese's work around sacred contracts, thinking, oh, maybe I'll understand my sacred contract. But it was really her archetypes work that resonated a lot because I had done some Jungian psychoanalysis, dream analysis, was familiar with Jungian archetypes, and that always resonated. And I had a moment when I was reading one of her books where I heard a voice that was not my voice. It felt like it was coming from somewhere else in the back of my mind that said very clearly, you can do what she does. And I knew instantly it had to do with reading archetypes and understanding archetypes. And
Wow.
actually, when I read one of your recent articles about your experience in the hospital, which, first of all, was very touching, and wow, that must have been really scary. And that moment you described,
That
looking in the
voice.
mirror,
Hmm.
yes, at the crossroads and hearing the voice and knowing that you had to make a choice. It was obviously a very different experience where I was, where this came through, but I also knew that it was a choice. It was like a mission or something that came through, and I knew I had to say yes or no. Like I had to accept because the answer was going to determine the rest of my life, what my journey was going to look like from there.
Yeah, those are powerful moments. However they come, they you know how powerful and potent they are. And given the choice, it's like X marks the spot. This is where you are in your life in this time, linear space. What are you gonna do? Like fate maybe has brought you to this point, but free will is being offered as like a temporary ticket to choose which direction you're gonna head. And then fate will probably take over. But in this moment, you have a
Oh,
tiny
yeah.
bit of agency to be like, well, and sometimes making the choice is hard, but the choice itself is kind of the moment of absolute clarity. And I think maybe that's why it comes in as an external voice, so that it gets your attention. It's loud. It's like a black and white crossroads sort of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we know I said yes because here I am doing astrology now. So no spoiler. So it wasn't too long after so after going through the so much death experience and all this searching, I had started a meditation practice and my spiritual experience, my spiritual journey had really started. But I hadn't quite, things hadn't quite crystallized yet in a clear path forward of what I was going to do with that and fulfill some sort of more soul aligned calling. And then I noticed some of the spiritual teachers and meditation teachers that I was listening to and following were starting to talk a lot about transits and what was going on with planets in the sky. And I was like, huh, maybe there is something to that astrology thing. I've always enjoyed reading my horoscope, but I had never really looked at it deeply. And Deborah Silverman was popping up in some of the YouTubes that I'd been watching. And I was like, oh, you know what? Let me just take a level one class for fun. I'll learn something about myself, and maybe understanding my natal chart will lead me to whatever that thing is going to be. I did not think it was going to be astrology. So I took
Surprise!
that, yeah, I took that level one class and I thought, Holy, there is a map. I have been to a lot of therapy. I have done internal family systems parts work. I'm familiar with Jungian archetypes. I've done inner child healing. Like, I've done a lot of kinds of therapy. I'm like, there's been a map this whole time. Oh
Why
my
didn't
God.
anybody tell me?
Yes, yes. I was like, this would have saved me so many years.
Or
And I
not.
was
Like I think
just,
going
no.
through all of that therapy helps you see astrology for what it is. And it's like you had all these disparate pieces that were functional on their own, but the astrology helps integrate all of that together. So it could have only happened this way, but it's good to kind of realize like, oh, there is like a map. It's like a constellation of the inside of my skull is right here.
Yes. Yeah. No, exactly. And in that like no regrets thing, it's, oh no, I found this exactly when I was supposed to find this for it to play the right role for me on my path. And I know that deeply, deeply. But I was just floored. I was shocked. I was like, wow, I was coming up with my parts and giving them names, which was a great process, and I highly recommend that. But having a map and having a teacher, an astrologer who can interpret the signs, the symbols, and understand these patterns and reflect something to me, say, oh, it might feel like this, it might manifest like that. It just makes it so much easier to recognize those parts than the tools I had used before, which are all great tools, but astrology just helped bring it all together. And not only as a static map, because even our natal chart is a living, breathing, always evolving, but understanding the ongoing movements of the planets. Once I started really tracking the transits and looking at my life and noticing what was showing up, that really took it to another level. And that's what I call like seeing in the dark. That was what I'm like, oh, this is what that voice was talking about. Once you pay attention to the patterns, you can see a different, it felt like peeling a layer up of on reality. No matter what is happening in the mundane world or in an interaction, being able to recognize the archetypal energies at play, either within myself or between different parts of myself, if they're in tension or disagreement, or in an exchange with a partner or with a friend or an issue at work, being able to kind of step out of being blended with your parts in IFS language. They use that, which I really like. That concept of recognizing when you're blended with a part and operating, wearing your inner critic glasses, if you will, and being able to step away and be the observer of your reality or notice the different parts, both within yourself and with whatever dynamics are playing out in any given situation. I just feel like it's such a superpower to be able to, I call it going to the upper room and being able to like pause, like, ooh, this still hurts me personally, or this is real and has real implications for my real life experience. But if I can pause and unblend from the parts and take a look at this from a higher perspective, I just have so much more agency, and so much more understanding of the meaning of, oh, this might not just be bad luck or a frustration or a roadblock. This is actually teaching me a lesson about setting boundaries or overcoming the inner critic or whatever it is. And that really opened up a lot for me personally.
Yeah. So trick question, how would you define archetype?
Ooh. I would define, because I love all systems. I think they're all valuable. I don't think there's one, you know, all of them are great and all of them have different specific definitions in different systems. I think it's just whichever one resonates most for you. Personally, I define an archetype as a pattern of energy, you know, and you could form it into a personalized character, I think that just helps relate to the parts. You could, they're represented in the planets themselves, which have their own personalities, if you will. Saturn often shows up and feels like an inner critic, if you will. Those two kind of go hand in hand. Or you could come up with your own systems of archetypes and name them. I have my Lisa, this like really hard internal bodyguard, who shows up. I'm a Cancer rising, and if something feels too sensitive, that hard shell, she's a bodyguard and she is tough, and we just shut down emotionally.
That's great.
Lisa's here,
Yeah.
and she means business. She's wearing all black, a little bit of my dark feminine. I have Sabrina. So that was a great system. Um, Anyways, I think what it boils down to is a pattern of energy. And
Yeah.
whatever system of archetypes, whether they're personalized or the ancient gods or mythic characters, also represent these universal archetypes. But
Yeah.
boiled down, I'd say a pattern of energy at its simplest. How would you define archetype?
It's tricky because I think, I in the past I would always, like you said, kind of put them into like a character. They have like an outfit, or they have like lines that they usually spout off, or they have a certain body form, or they have some sort of like personal cosmology around them. But I usually imagine an archetype to be kind of like almost like a paper doll. And it's
Mm,
just like these are the outfits that are on the page for this paper doll. It's a little limiting, but it's something that's recognizable. And then a few months ago, I was listening to my tarot teacher, Susan Chang, was interviewing two of the Jungian analysts that host the This Jungian Life podcast.
oh, I love that podcast.
They were talking about just archetypes in tarot, and then in Carl Jung's work. And one of the analysts described an archetype as like a waterway that is dried up. So like a river path in the desert. When you get flash floods, the water has carved the space from the force, and every time it rains, it fills it up, but then it goes away. And then an archetype really only has form when we imbue meaning into it. And I thought that was like a really graceful way to describe it, because in my limiting idea of a character, it archetypes are so much larger than just what we can imagine a character to be. And so I liked the image of a waterway. It's like as soon as we kind of pay attention to what kind of the archetype of the hero, for example, it has so many rivulets that come off of that. It's not just a character form, but it's so much broader, and it's helped me think about them in a much broader sense. Even though intellectually I knew them to be broad, but I found myself limiting it. But I think you're spot on. It's like this pattern of energy. It's some sort of pattern enough for our little tiny brains to grasp onto and recognize as a pattern, and to be able to kind of start there and then explore out. So that's my answer. Is I'm just going to steal that from this Jungian life, that it's an old waterway.
Yeah, no, I love that metaphor. That's beautiful and it really resonates.
Well, so take us now to like through you started with Deb Silverman, and that began so much just self-exploration. Where was the point where you wanted to integrate the astrology part of yourself into something to bring outward a little bit? Like where did that tilt start to form into the public astrology sphere?
Sure. Well, so in level 3 of Deborah Silverman's school, you're put on the spot and give a live client reading to a real client.
That's
And
great. That's excellent.
it is wonderful because you're there with your mentors who will step in if you're really fumbling, right? But, with my Capricorn stellium, I want to over prepare and be absolutely thorough and an expert before I would ever claim, to be able to help someone. But you're kind of pushed out of the nest, if you will. And wow, was I so grateful for that experience because something really magical happened during that training, being on the spot. Because at that point, I wasn't sure. I wanted to keep studying it, but I wasn't sure if I was going to make a career out of it, right? But during the live on the spot readings, something in the chart happened where I realized astrology is part preparation, part technique, which is absolutely critical and the foundation, but you can't over prepare because how the chart actually gets experienced and lived is so personal to the person. So you can have some ideas, but you really need to ask questions. And that other 50%, I would say, is what comes through from the live discussion. And something that would happen for me on the chart, it was almost like certain placements would pop off the chart or light up,
I
and
love
a
it. Yeah.
story would connect. And it was something that I hadn't, really prepared much on prior to the reading. And we went in a completely different direction than where I thought there might be the most meat, if you will, for the reading. Um, and I was like, wow, something magical is happening. And it's so beautiful to create this sacred space and something beyond me and what my little intellectual brain can do with systems and pattern recognition, opening to a higher wisdom that comes through and helps me see these other patterns and connect and share something or reflect something back or give an insight that really lands for someone. And that felt so amazing. And it felt like a sacred honor
Mm.
to be in this, I call it the nest, for my brand name, really feeling like taking this cosmic and spiritual, kind of hard to grasp stuff that I used to call woo-woo stuff. And honestly, I didn't think was real for much of my life.
It is woo woo. That's the fun part.
Yeah, and I love it. And bringing it down to real life, making it practical, making it usable. It felt really magical. And that's when I knew I was like, oh, this is what I've been training my whole life for. This is almost similar to what I was doing in my consulting work, but now it's the soul-based version. And I'm able to read patterns and share information about archetypes for people, for them to recognize, for them to create new connections, for them to have language for something they had sensed but couldn't really articulate before, to help them have greater self-understanding, clarity, and agency when life can feel like, man, why is this happening? It can be chaotic, it can be unexplainable, life can be really hard. So, helping people understand the meaning behind what might be happening and helping them find their way even a tiny bit easier felt like such an important, powerful opportunity to be able to follow.
Well, it's similar to like becoming an artist. I mean, you can have the urge to create and want to communicate an expression. But if you are able to be trained in a modality to understand how to best mix the pigments and the brushes and the techniques and the kinds of canvas and or if you learn that technicality of the language of whatever medium you have, then that prepares you to be able to channel the inspiration when it comes through. And it's similar to astrology. Like if you understand uh techniques and the sense of timing and the patterns that each of the planets have, you can have that as a scaffold. But then or you can have that as a skeleton, and then what puts the meat into the chart is the magic of the moment of the reading itself. Because the chart speaks to all of life, you might have they may have said something about money in the intake form. And so you're going to look at second house, you might look at their moon, you might look at the ruler of the second or anything that kind of looks at the themes of money. But then something else pops out at the chart that doesn't really speak directly to money, but it informs the higher philosophies that are influencing that second house. And it's from an experience they share that they didn't say in the intake form. And it just that organic process is that like living experience of exchange between two souls, like having that connection. And you're able to pull that forward if you do have good technical experience or study or history, and being able to balance the two by not being overly technical, because if you're overly technical, then the client can't connect, or be overly just about the vibes and not have any sort of actual technical language to share to them, not give them any sort of tool. So it's finding that balance between the two. I'm glad that you got to experience that and see that it's not just you learning the technique, but you connecting with another spirit and offering them exactly what they needed in that and the magic of that moment. So, if you are listening to this and you do read astrology charts, but you haven't made that jump, doing a reading for someone you don't know, like that is a huge step, because you're going to bring, if it works, if the schedule works out and you come to an agreement to do the reading, you are going to give them exactly what they need. You may not feel that way on the front end, but if you come with humility and training, then you were going to give them something that is useful to them. And the more you do it, the more you will understand these words that I'm saying. It's hard to understand them when you're not on the other side of it. So I'm glad that you were able to make that leap. Um, so from that, what was the time frame, or what was the process to then have the conversations with yourself that maybe you do, like you can take that consulting career and transform it into an astrology consulting career?
Oh, the second I did the level 3 training and did my first live client meeting, that was it. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. This is the soul calling. Let's go. So I just started giving a lot more readings after that, mostly for friends, but then I would get referrals through friends, and that was all last fall. And then I got really serious over the winter of like, okay, I need a brand, I need a website. How do I really, start putting this out there? Along the way, I had discovered Substack, and as part of my own healing, honestly, and working the chart and really living the astrology, which is, I think, where the real healing and embodiment and real potential grows with understanding your natal chart and transits and everything, was I just started writing. I didn't have a content strategy, I didn't have a brand, but I knew also from my chart that, oh, I'm supposed to process some of the Plutonian material and share it in the 10th house, express it through my fifth house placements, even though it was terrifying. But I was like, you know what? My whole life had kind of fallen apart by that point. I talked a little bit about some of the Pluto transits that I had gone through with my parents passing. Sure, all within that big time frame. Also, I got married and divorced in less than a year. The whole relationship was 5 years, but the marriage lasted less than one. And that, to someone who used to care a lot about how appearances, reputation, how did things look, that was a real life lesson. And I was really just in a period of, it felt like profound loss. Like I didn't have anything to hold on to, but somehow astrology was the only thing that made sense. So I was kind of in a place I was like, well, my whole life fell apart. Like right now, I have no career, no marriage, no house. I didn't even have a car. Like everything went out the window all at once. But I knew I was on the right path. Even though all the external circumstance, by all accounts, my life looked like a shit show. Sorry if we're not
No,
bleep
you're
that out
fine.
if you need to. My life looked by someone who's very Capricornian and always holding things together. My life looked like a complete shit show on the outside. But inside, I knew I was making the right decisions. I knew I was finally living in my truth. I knew I'd finally found my soul calling. I didn't know how it was going to come together. I was like, I'm just going to start writing about this. I'm like, I have no reputation to protect because I don't have one. It's like all out the window.
So liberating.
Yeah. And I'm like, I can write about anything. They're like, this is kind of morbid, but if your parents aren't alive anymore, you don't have to worry about embarrassing them.
Yeah.
If you don't have a husband, you don't have to worry about what he thinks.
When I listen to this, so I think of because I look at things within an astrology and tarot lens. And so Mars exalts in Capricorn, where you have that stellium. Mars in Tarot is represented by the Tower card. And the Tower card shows something that is built up very tall and has reached a point where it is unsustainably tall. And so there is a force that comes outside of it, this lightning bolt, and it breaks it apart so that the tower can crumble so that we can then rebuild from the wreckage. It's like it's a process of growing and it's like the moon waxes and becomes full and then wanes and disseminates. It's just this lunar cycle, right? But then also when you were speaking, I'm imagining the process of a butterfly or a moth going through that chrysalis stage in order for it to become the next version of itself. It has like its exterior has to kind of fall away and to have a relationship and a career and a car and a house and a set of parents just fall away from you. Like all of those are really difficult human experiences, but they happened as you in this, iteration of your metamorphosis was also coming out. So I like that you were able to find that internal trust because it's hard to have that when you're thinking in practical sense of things are on the outside look pretty bad, but I'm steady, like I'm the eye of the storm right now. Like I'm not worried because I feel like when you're doing your soul's work, it's like this buttery soft, knowing that you're like, I don't have to really explain it. I'm just gonna honor it and trust it because like what else could I do but trust this exact buttery soft light. That's how I'm imagining it.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. And I've resonated so much with the caterpillar to butterfly metamorphosis, especially because things just never go as quickly as you think. Oh, well, I'm on my soul's path, so I'm just gonna go and it's all gonna come together easily. No, it takes a really long time, and there's
Yeah.
still our hard emotions. And I was worried at times, and I
Yeah.
was still sad or I was still grieving. But understanding the astrology and having an outlet to, write publicly on Substack, I was like, well, here, my life is falling apart. I can write about it and write about how astrology is helping me make sense of it and learn as I go and have a place to share it, which is there's so much power in being witnessed, where I think that's such a key component of astrology, both the one-on-one client dynamics, but I love the groups and communities that come together and we share our stories with each other because everybody's version of their Pluto going over your sun or, it's going to be different, but knowing other people and connecting and hearing each other's stories, I think is just so healing.
Yeah, I think astrological community is is vital, especially for astrologers. Like if you're a client and you like to get a reading, it's fun to have people to talk astrology to, but as practicing business owner astrologers or ones that are scholars and do research, like having a community to share and bounce ideas off. To me, I don't know how you would do it alone. I know that plenty of people do, but there's just such reciprocity and sharing astrological knowledge or just commiserating with it that I'm glad that you were able to find that soon because I feel like it's a key that I obviously adore. I have people on my channel because I love talking to other people all around the world about their astrological practice. But I think that it's just vital for so many reasons, and I believe that it helps you develop deeper as an astrologer to have those connections with people and doing something honestly like writing about a process of grief or a process of learning, is a great way to go about it. Now that you're kind of you're still early on in your career, but what does your writing practice look like? Are you still continuing to write about astrology and your process as you see clients now? But like specifically, where do you see yourself in the writing sphere?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely continuing my writing practice. And so what I put out on Substack are two main content pieces are forecast style transit information, which I started doing actually after being on a bachelorette trip for my girlfriend. And I was giving everybody in the morning the daily weather. I was like, oh, it's Libra season, but the moon's in Cancer. Oh, sunny with a chance of tears today, guys. And they're like, you should really write about this. You should put this on Instagram. You should put this out there. And I realized for me, following what was going on every day helped me stay tuned in and stay accountable to reflecting on what was showing up in my life. So I really like doing the daily and weekly forecasts. But then the other component that I like even more is the deeper. I write more personal essays. And I try not to over structure or over plan those because it just depends on what's coming up. It's always related to whatever's going on in the astrology, but it starts with my personal life. It starts with what's happening for me personally, an event or some emotions I'm dealing with. But then I connect it to the recent full moon or Mars conjunct Chiron or whatever was going on, which became my reflection tool and helped me find the meaning of what was showing up in my reality. And so I think that's why your writing really resonates with me. I love the very personal story-based writing where it's not, because sometimes even I get a little like, you can't be that creative or that deep with the forecast style, just talking about the transits. I mean, you can if you're like talking about something more deeply, but if you're just kind of talking about what are the patterns in the sky right now, kind of just getting to the basics. But I love having the space to go deeper and more personal because what's the whole point of tracking what's going on in the sky is kind of making sense of the personal, like what we're actually here experiencing in real life.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love your writing. I think that it's memorable because you are writing from that personal, authentic place, and you're not trying to preach, I guess, for lack of a better word. It doesn't feel so like hit you over the head. You need to agree with what I'm saying. It's more like I'm sharing this from my perspective with this astrological weather. And receive it, dip your cup into this well if you want, but no one, you're not force feeding it to anyone. Um, During COVID and then afterwards, David Lynch used to do a daily forecast where he would be like sitting in his kitchen and just kind of talking about the daily weather. And it was just like this really sweet, short check-in. And even though I didn't live where he lived, I didn't live on the same coast, I would always tune in and listen to his forecast. And there is something comforting for people that aren't um, knowledgeable about astrology, but they just want some basic bullet points. So anybody that does forecasting work, I do it once a month. That's about as much as I want to do it. Doing it weekly or even doing it daily, I think is impressive because you have to distill down a lot of information for an ephemeral moment of like, this is where we are today. And we can't get into the weeds of this whole process of what this planet has been doing in the sign, hitting all these other planet placements. It's like you have to distill down just a few things with a few words. And anybody that does forecasting work, it's a lot. It's easier said than done. There's a lot that goes behind it. Do you see yourself doing forecasting in other forms? Like, do you do Instagram lives where you do forecasting like that, or is it simply within the written space?
It's right now, it's all been written, but I've been feeling the call, and several mentors and friends are like, this is so much more powerful when I hear you talk about it. You
Yeah,
should
yeah.
really put yourself out there. So that's part of my business plan. This is
You heard it
kind of my
here.
first, yes, now I'm definitely going to be held accountable. But yeah, I want to do it's, oh my gosh, it's so funny. It's like hard to even say it out loud. Like, I want to do video or at least audio, but yeah, I'm gonna start doing the video because it really is. It's just, and it feels more personal.
Yeah,
I don't even like sometimes like looking at what I wrote. I'm like, oh, this is just kind of blah. But when I talk about it, it just feels more meaningful and more personal,
yeah.
and I honestly, they'll probably be able to do it even faster because I can just talk off the cuff rather than
Yeah. Yeah, usually when I write, the way that I write, before I'm done, before I hit publish, I always read it out loud to myself.
Mm.
Sometimes I'll read it out loud into a voice note and then listen to it because if it doesn't sound right when it's read out loud, it's not written how I want it to be written. I want it to be conversational and I want it to be easier to be heard in that way. But something Substack does, you can just do podcasts from your articles. You can just record the audio and be sent out. So you can make the transition if you're not ready to do video to just read your articles as your podcasts and kind of start to, spread your little rivulet out to a new channel.
I love that. Well, and that's a really good practical tip because I'm like, okay, I got to just get comfortable on video and do some practice ones, but I haven't done it before. So maybe baby steps is the way.
Yeah, and like you can see my face, I'm on here. I'm a fan of anybody that you don't want to have your face on video, but you still want to use video. You can just be on the other side of the camera. You can just use stock footage. You can just go out and S.J. Anderson used to do this. I don't know if he still does this, but he would walk around his town and he lives in Albania and he would walk around with his microphone and he would just kind of like talk about the transits and talk about things. Like he would have like the talking head video, but a lot of it was just him moving around. And I like those videos because it there's something about the flow and you're not looking at just the person talking. I think that you can, I have Uranus in the first house, so I always use this as my calling card for you can do whatever the fuck you want. You can make anything the way that you want to make it. So if you want to do video, you don't have to be on screen if you don't want to. Like no one, I mean, I'm sure content creators or social media managers have like a thing that they suggest, but I just argue against that. I say anything that you're gonna, if it opens up the flow of creative work and helps you in your own transmission of this calling that you are pulling forth, whatever makes that flow um, more inspirational and excited for you to do and reciprocal energy wise, do it. And sure, you can be on video if you want, but if you don't have to be to have a channel, you don't have to be to have a video channel. You can really do it in whatever way. Um, so there's that piece, but then now let's talk about what's on the screen. We have your website, and this is Lunar Nest. One, I think it's a really beautiful name. And can you tell a little bit about the story of how you got to this name? And then we can look at the offerings that you do as your practice.
Thank you. Yeah, so Lunar Nest was really born out of my calling to feel like my role as astrologer is being a bridge between lunar insights, what gets illuminated only under the light of the moon, what kind of operates in the dark or the subconscious, and how we get to that is through astrology, through the moon and the other planets. So thinking of the celestial, the cosmic wisdom bridged down to earth. Nest is made of earth materials. Nest is a safe, comfortable place you go when maybe you're all of us go through phases where like our wing is a little broken or we're tired. Birds can't be out flying forever and ever nonstop, right? A nest is the safe place to come and explore those more cosmic insights, but in practical, grounded ways that can actually help you in real life. And I'm a Cancer rising Taurus moon, so just I need my nest at home. I need to feel safe, like in a nest metaphor container with my people, with my cats, being cozy. I'm all about being cozy and comfortable. So the metaphors operate on many levels, but really it's being a bridge between the cosmic guidance, but grounded into real life, practical utility.
That's great. Yeah, that's a beautiful description and very Cancer Taurus coded. It's lunarnestastrology.com, and you can go to Liz's website and you can go to offerings. So can you speak a little bit about what kind of offerings you have?
Yeah, so the foundational offering, my natal chart reading, I call a soul signature reading, as you see here. And that's the starting point. I wanted to make it really easy instead of offering all kinds of different types of specialty readings, especially as I'm really getting started too. But I think the right starting point for anyone who's new to astrology is having a really good thorough analysis of your natal chart to get the foundational understanding of your inner parts, and how they work together, and a little bit of an understanding of the transits, what's current right now. So that's really the entry point and the starting point. So that's where I like all of my clients to start. And from there, I have what I call life chapter reading, which is kind of like a solar return, but it doesn't have to be on your solar return, your birthday, but more whenever it's relevant for you, going into a more specific look at transits and timing specifically. But what I'm offering, which it's not reflected on the website yet, but is a package offering after doing your initial soul signature natal chart reading for those who want to go a little bit deeper, but not just a one off, but want to go deeper into your natal chart, want to know how to like do a little more with your own natal chart. So when you're following something like my daily forecasts or other astrologers' forecasts of the transits, it just makes so much more sense and becomes more meaningful when you really have a grasp of your own natal chart and what's being activated, what houses, what placements, etc. And just doing deeper work. I'm offering a 3-month package where you do two life chapter or yeah, life oh, it's the next one, the life navigation sessions, plus a written transit report where I give you a monthly outlook that's written around what big transits are coming through, what kind of energy you can expect, and how to work with that. And that also acts as a guide to help guide our conversations and our sessions. So I call that for some people, just having one natal chart reading is great and it gives them a level of self-understanding, and then they go on their way, apply what they will, and that's great. For people who, get that little bug and are like, wow, there's really something here. I think 3 months with two readings a month is really just a like nice container to do a deeper dive into your own chart and learn how to do astrology, how to, I call it living astrology, how to live your chart and apply it from there on your own so that that really becomes something that's integrated into your regular life.
So, this is for return clients, clearly. Have
Yes.
you had people do this and then like catch the astrology bug and then go deeper with their own studies? I mean, for those clients that I've had that like come back for more and more readings, I tend to give them lots of resources for all the rabbit hole, like research that they want to do. It seems like this would be prime for those people to like help launch a new astrology student, whether, not everyone that studies astrology becomes an astrologer. But have you had that experience yet for somebody doing this life navigation session and then going even deeper into astrological study?
I have one who I think is on her way
Yeah, yeah.
for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and here's Liz again. I like that you do a little free consult just to make sure that you're a good match, for people that want to have, just to introduce you. But your website looks amazing. It's
Thank you.
really,
I have to shout out my friend Erin Brennan, Brennan
mm,
Brand. Anyone who
cool.
needs a website or marketing strategy, I would have never have been able to create this on my own. She really took my vision, my thoughts about the brand, and really helped. She took everything, all these like disparate pieces I had in my mind and like stream of consciousness thoughts about the brand
Mm,
and turned it into what you see here. So I really have to shout out to her.
awesome. Well, maybe I'll get their information and put it in the show notes too, so that it'll be nice and a clickable link for anybody that wants website help. Well, I think that those were all the notes that we talked about prior to this. So I think that we are at a natural end. I love that today Jupiter is conjoined your ascendant. So I think that that's like a really lovely auspicious time for recording. We're recording this on Thursday, May 21st. And thanks so much, Liz, for coming and talking with me. And do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
I just want to thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's really just been a delight to chat with you today.
Yeah, same, same. All right, well, I'll put the link to your Substack in the show notes so that people can go over there and subscribe and to get the forecasting and your personal stories. And you can go to lunarastrology.com to learn more about Liz and book a reading. And with that, we'll sign off. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you.
Like and subscribe.